Building industry, we've been talking about it a bit this morning, more on the government side of things. We spoke earlier with Scott Elleron, our engineer expert, used to work for Department of Transport. Now, the building industry has been described as a $360 billion house of cards due to exceptionally some low profit margins and the fact that builders continue to fold. And we're not talking about trades here, but every week we hear of another builder going bust. And whenever people find out how little some of the margins are, they can't believe that they can stay in business for that. And there's a lot to unpack around this. You can get a license pretty easily to become a builder, to get a building license. As I said, you've got to be a lot longer to become a tradesperson. What's happening with it all, and where does it all finish up, and how does it play into us getting these new apartments and townhouses and homes built over the next couple of years? Steve Chandler may be able to answer some questions. He's a property development expert. He joins us now. G'day, Steve.
G'day, Bill. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good. I'm hoping you can flesh out a little bit of this. We talked on the government side of things a bit earlier, but 2,349, I think, at last count, was the construction firms that had collapsed in the last year, and insolvencies had increased by 75% in the 12 months. What's causing it? What's going on?
Look, we had a fundamental problem in our industry has always been the profitability of builders. You know, there's a very low barrier of entry to get in. You don't need a lot of capital, and you know, from that perspective, it's relatively easy to become a builder. From there, you look at it, and because you've got low barriers of entry, there's builders everywhere. So a lot of people want to do it. And when you've got massive competition, obviously your margins drop. So builders operate on very, very tight margins. And then that means that they're susceptible to things happening in the market, price risk. And COVID, the whole pandemic period that we had, saw a heap of problems for the industry, and you know, globally as well for all sorts of industries. But if we specifically look at building, what we've got is, if you look at home builders, they rely on timber for timber framing.
Yep.
You know, just before COVID started in late 2019, early 2020, we had those massive fires down in southern New South Wales and northeastern Victoria, and a lot of our housing timber framing crop was grown down there, and it's got severely damaged, which meant no timber for our housing industry. So when the timber sort of disappeared, obviously the cost of getting your hands on some timber went through the roof. Supply and demand in very simplistic terms. Add to that the problem we had with we needed to get timber from overseas. We had COVID, we had lockdowns all over the world. Couldn't get timber from overseas. Suddenly the price of timber then skyrockets. I don't know if you recall, the end of 2020, we had the Home Builder grant nationally, $25,000. So what was happening before the builders knew that we had problems with timber and getting a hold of it, everybody's out there buying their new home, the house and land packages, etc. So all these project home builders locked in fixed price contracts, thinking timber was going to be $1, and it ends up costing $2. And we had things like that. Then the government came out with all their infrastructure projects, and when government spends money on infrastructure, it's stimulating the economy. That's great, but what it does, it takes all the trades away from the general building industry, and also all the concrete and steel. And the prices for concrete and steel go up, demand for labour goes up. At an Olympic Games coming up, Olympic Games win for Brisbane, and you've got more infrastructure. So suddenly you've got all this massive demand for limited resources, and those resource prices go through the roof. And that is effectively what's happened to our builders. Because builders operate on these small margins and costs went through the roof, and they've got fixed price contracts, that is effectively what sent a lot of these, the vast majority of these builders broke. There's at a point in time, a good builder might have a bit of cash built up from profits on other projects. When those cash reserves disappear, then they're running on empty, and unless they can pick up new projects that are highly profitable, then it's only a matter of time until they collapse.
Yeah. So I guess someone like I've read, like Scott Hutchinson from Hutchinson's, that they've been talking about how difficult the industry is, but they've been fortunate to have planned well with what they've got on the forward schedule, and also they have squirreled away well, and they've been able to, I guess, give themselves a buffer to guide through that difficult time. They're one that's managed to navigate okay, a big operator.
Yep, and a lot of builders have actually gone back into their pockets and pulled out money that they've made from their businesses over the years and reinvested it, put the capital back into their business to keep it going. But how long do you do that for until you say, look, I'm going to go bust if I keep doing that? What's better? And then you get into that issue of who are you going to end up owing money to? It becomes really, really ugly.
It's difficult, I guess, unless... so this is where, if you can't go back and have a variation clause or something in your contract, you're hung out, aren't you? Unless your clients are prepared to go, hey, look, we get what's going on. We know there's increases you couldn't have forecast. If they just hold their ground and go, well, that's the contract we signed, there's not much they can do, is it?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting when you look at it from that perspective. Here I am. Imagine if I was getting a house built, and the builder comes and says, I can't finish the house for you because the costs have gone up, I'm going broke, I need more money. First and foremost, you go, that's a lie. You're just trying to rip me off. But if you can get over that and understand that the builder's not lying, the question you have to ask yourself is, am I willing to pay more money now to get my house finished so I don't have to go through the pain and suffering of them going broke before it's finished and having to, go through liquidators and trying to get the home warranty insurance to pay out and all that sort of stuff? Do I want the pain and agony down the track, or do I want to just try to get my house finished? And it's a really, really difficult choice for particularly mums and dads who don't, operate in the business well.
Yeah,
and it's very difficult, very difficult.
Do you think we've seen? Have we reached the point where we've seen the worst of it, or there'll be more of this to come? Because I don't see. Do you see in the pipeline anything getting better in terms of pricing for materials? And how many more trades do we need? Is it 90,000 odd or something to meet the housing goals alone?
Yeah, the Master Builders Association said if we could snap our fingers and create 90,000 tradies today, they'd be employed in the industry. So, my crystal ball says to me, construction prices are going to increase a little bit this year. I think next year they're actually going to start coming off because a lot of work that... Well, it depends where you are in Australia, I suppose. In Queensland, in Brisbane, I reckon probably won't come off because you've got the demand from all the Olympics related infrastructure work. But other places in Australia, it probably will come off as the other infrastructure projects die off. Again, as those other projects in the other states come off, a lot more tradies are going to come up to Brisbane to get that work.
Yeah.
So it's possible that Queensland might sort of stabilise or probably go up a little bit, but it's not sustainable at those levels. I mean, we can't develop anything that's affordable now. Now, if we talk about homes and medium density, as a developer, it is seriously hard for us to make a project stack up. Currently you look at the rents that are out there. Rents are going through the roof. Property prices, houses are going up again, but apartments and townhouses sort of haven't really moved much. And if we want to develop, substantial numbers of housing for all these migrants that we're bringing in, you got 650,000 people came into the country last year, and however many more we're going to get this year. We've got to provide mass, accommodation for them. And that's the medium density and high density sort of residential. and we're just not in a position to be able to produce them because we operate for a profit, and if we can't make a profit, we're not going to create the homes, and there's this vicious cycle that just goes round and round. So what the answer is, there are smarter people than me that haven't solved the housing crisis. I just know that it's a very hard problem for us to solve.
So the federal government could throw $11-12 billion, which I think they've thrown at it, but you can throw all the money you like at it, but that's not going to fix it by the sound of it.
No, it's not. When you look at our industry as a whole across Australia, sort of when the Asian money was in Australia, sort of in the 2015, 2017, we were developing about 240,000 homes a year, and that's sort of around the peak of what our industry can do. Generally, we'll sort of work out somewhere around the 200,000 a year. Right now, we need to generate 300,000 or 400,000 a year to cope with what we've got, and we're not going to be able to do it. The government wants to pump all this money into create this additional housing. The problem is we haven't got the tradies to do it, which means we've got to bring more people into the country, which means we put stress on the housing market that we've already got. That vicious circle.
Yeah, it's a cycle, isn't it? It's a hard cycle to see breaking and cracking and starting to come out the other side, I must admit.
Yeah, well, when people can't afford to buy, a two-bedroom unit, for example, then you've got to start saying to yourself, what can we do about it? And as a developer, I'm starting to look at what has been happening in Asia and some of the European countries for a long time, and that is multi-generational housing.
Yeah.
Do we now build 6 and 8 unit apartments with multiple bathrooms for the 3 generations, grandparents, the parents, and the children to live in? We've got to do something because my children, for example, I wonder if they'll ever own a home.
Yeah, me too. I think the same thing. Do you think with the situation it is at the moment, it's almost an environment where it's made for someone to take advantage? Can we see prices of materials and costs for stuff like your concrete and your steel continue to rise because there's demand for it, and the tradies that are in the business at the moment, they can pretty much charge whatever they like, couldn't they?
Oh, they can. It is a seller's market from a trade and materials perspective.
Yeah.
It will change eventually, but we don't know when. Crystal balls are a wonderful thing. They never get it right, do they?
No. All right, nice to talk with you. Thanks. I wish it was a more pleasant picture you could paint for the future, but we'll just have to ride with it and see what happens.
Terrific, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Chandler, property development expert. Wow, what did you make of that? I guess it's what we all sort of thought and suspected, but when you hear it round home like that from someone that's in the business and he can't see a light at the end of the tunnel, really, it's alarming.